Owen, John Gately, Arthur Gately, Oliver Jackson, George Lakeman, Frederick John Hawkins, and then in 1915, George Vaughan, Frederick Bladen, Kenneth William Henry Meakin, Frederick Charles Lockley, Arthur Stockton, Peter Kelly, Charles Henry Barker, Sidney John Perkins Ward, George Edward Woodley.
Also in 1915, William Bernard Duval, John Croft, Reginald Taverner Johnson, Henry Ackroyd Ridgway, Oswald William Boddington, Nigel Fife Watson Bishop, Horace Neville Hartley, Algernon George Cousins, Frank Davenel, James Smith, William Nichols, Louis Plymouth, Thomas Gilbert, Arthur Glover, Graham Glover.
Continuing 1915, James Herbert Dawson, George Jones, George Rowson, William Blakeman, Philip Henry York Owen, Herbert Taylor Gridley, Harry Farr. Then in 1916, Joseph Sims, William Henry Cartwright, George Howes, Arthur John Healy, Jim Dawson, William Tilsley, Griffith Charles Llewellyn Owen, William Alfred Powell.
Also in 1916, John Kelly, Frank Rowland Egerton, Elijah Chilton, George Buckley, Arthur Porter, Arthur Daniel, John Duval, Herbert Thomas Malkin, Samuel Alfred Nevitt, Robert Bott, Henry James, Alfred Glover, Tom Ashley Pugh, Joseph Rice, Albert Edward Cartwright.
Also in 1916, John Kelly, Edward Elkin, John Mincher, Eric George Allen, John Blakeman, Norman Ridout, John Slaney, Kenneth Thornhill Wood, Harry Thorley, Ernest Moss, Frank Sims, William Key, William Caulfield, and in 1917, John Harvey, Frederick Hawkins.
Also, 1917, Albert Vincent Williams, William Clark, Arthur Benjamin Croft, James Sedgley, Frederick Mellor, Joseph Sedgley, Henry Howes, George Richard Bennett, Herbert Trevor Wood, Sidney Walker Watson, Frank William Chell, Richard Blakeman, Frank Smith, William James Mifflin, and Harry Tunstall.
Also 1917, George Smith, Thomas Smith, George Wardle, Edward Wood, Edwin Cashmore, Frederick Simcox, Harry Law, Thomas Riley, Harold Brown, Henry Charles Dickens, George Jones, Richard Austin Harding, James Dare, James Thomas Harston, and Edward Ridgway.
Also in 1917, William Henry Durham, William Arthur Lysett, Frederick Joseph Stewart. Now in 1918, Henry Cartwright, John Reginald Pearson, John Lunt, James Thomas Venables, Charles Henry Haynes, Thomas Noden, Arthur Jack Harris, Benjamin Oswell Chaplin, Sidney John Ward, Samuel Myatt, Thomas Alexander Croft, Harry Glover.
1918 continued. Bernard Walters, George Chaplain, Louis Victor Smith, Arthur Buckley, James Aurelius Bowditch, Thomas Wan, Harold Bricknell, George Bagley, George Moore, Bernard Joseph Dickens, Ernest John Holden, Arthur Harvey, Arthur John Macon, Thomas Parks, and Walter Harper.
1918 continued. James Edward Fowkes, James William Smith, William Lant, James Ashton Byrne, Frank Stockton, William Smith, Edward Brammer, Samuel William Turner, John Thomas Tompkinson, Thomas Alexander Frost, Joseph Hazelhurst, Frederick Lansdale, and James Edgar Owen, R.I.P.
Hang on.